What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Just got a quick minute. Just got done with a back and tricep workout. Compliments of my coach. I am a little tired at this point, but we will get through it. So, yesterday, I talked about having to take my weight up pretty extreme this off season. I got up as high as 252 pounds. And so, why don't I talk about that for a minute? For the most part, like you guys see on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else, from maybe your pros or fitness models or whatever you guys want to follow, and they always look like they're in shape. One of two things is typically occurring at that moment. Those are old pictures, which obviously you'll see a lot of us, we share what's called the prep files. We go back in time to when we looked amazing, and we'll share those pictures quite frequently. Especially if you're a personal trainer, you're trying to sell a business. You don't want to put something where you look really, really soft in the off season because you're trying to add muscle tissue in the process. With that being said, so basically what happened is my weight sits on the high end of a light heavyweight category. So my weight typically was, for my last show, my first show last year, I missed weight. I hit 202, and I needed to be 198 and a quarter. It ended up working out in my favor when I won my class. However, you never want to miss a weight. So with that being said, I thought I had 4 more weeks to get into the Michigan, where I got down to roughly I weighed in, dried out at 193. So that means I had pulled water at that point. So we did make the weight. Well, after having a conversation with my coach, we decided that it would be best for me to make the jump into a heavyweight category. And so obviously heavyweight category goes up to 220 pounds. So you don't want to sit on the low end of that cusp, because you're going to get, I'm only 5'6", and I'm going to get outsized pretty easily to a guy who is even, say, 5'8" and weighs 220, or let's say 215. Let's say I come in at 201, 202, gaining that 4 pounds of muscle tissue, which is still a pretty good gain. And so this off season, we really had to push the food to really put me to hopefully gain the muscle tissue. So like I said, I hit up to 252 pounds in this off season, which is really, really heavy for me. It's the heaviest I've ever been. I still wasn't, I don't want to say I was fat per se, but I was fluffy. But I understood the reasoning behind it. We really did want to take me into that next level. And so far from where I'm sitting, like I told you guys yesterday, I'm 16 pounds heavier, and I'm leaner than I was this time last prep. So hopefully we did something right, like I said previously. But that was the reasoning behind taking myself so heavy. If you want to gain a substantial amount of muscle tissue, you have to be willing to let the condition go. Because if you're really feeding your body and you're feeding it minimal calories to allow yourself to grow within what's called a surplus, if you're not in that surplus, how is that muscle going to have time to recover and feed properly? Like I said in a previous video, you can train as hard as you possibly want in the gym, but the growth aspect happens in the recovery process and how well it recovers. Obviously, how well you tear it down, part of the training aspect of it. But understanding that you have to do it properly and put yourself in that surplus. So let's just break it down. So let's say we would normally go, I would find what's called your basal metabolic rate, or your total daily energy expenditure, TDEE. There's also NEAT and other ways of calculating calorie needs, especially with activity that you're doing, working out. How is your job? Is your job, you stand, you sit? Are you in a construction where you move all the time? These are all factors that go into when aligning a diet. But let's say just baseline, you have a 2,100 calorie BMR with your multiplier. That's also adding in the exercise that you do or the type of job that you have. let's say it's at 2,100 calories. Well, in hindsight, I would take away 500 and start you at 1,600, because basically I'm taking away 500, and then 3,500 calories is a pound. Okay, so within those 5 days or those 7 days, I'm taking away 3,500 calories. So in a perfect world, mind you, in a perfect world, you would lose exactly 1 pound in that week. Could be, you know, and unfortunately, that's just the baseline that we go off of. So if I were to put you in a surplus at that 2,100 calories, I put you at 26. So then you're in a surplus of 500 or 1 pound a week. It's never going to add up to a pound a week. I can almost guarantee it. You really, really have to eat diligently. And I know I have this conversation, especially with my students all the time, because they always come in and they look at me and, you know, that's the first thing they want to talk about. And then I tell them, I said, you don't eat enough. And they look at me like I'm nuts. They're like, no, I eat a lot of food. I said, no, you don't. And then I'll explain to them what even like 4,000 calories of clean calories look like. And they look at me like I'm nuts. Let's even say 450 carbs, which is 10 cups of cooked rice. You know, when you eat 10 cups of cooked rice, think about how much rice that actually is. So they kind of get into perspective. I know a young man that is in my classroom, he's really, really into this right now. So I helped him out a little bit, told him, you know, what things to eat, because he was eating things like egg whites and tuna fish and chicken all the time. But I told him, I said, if you want to gain weight, you need to put yourself in more of a surplus. You know, add those carbohydrates, add some more fats into your diet. And so he did, and he talked to me right before we went on spring break, and he said, I gained 10 pounds. He says, I don't know how you understood how to do that. And it's just the science behind the approach. Like I said, a lot of people look at us and they say, well, you're just a guy who goes and lifts weights all the time and you're just this big meathead, quote unquote meathead. There really is a science behind everything that we do. For the most part, most of us are fairly intellectual when it comes to all this. We understand the whys and the hows, and there's different things that have to go into it. So with that being said, that's really what I had to do this off season. I had to put myself in a surplus so I would have the ability to not only make the jump, but be able to compete while making that jump. You know, there's big things coming. I don't know how it's going to play out. Quite frankly, I'm okay with that right now, because of the progress that we've made this year has been substantial. I've given this year 110% for those of you who've talked to me and are close to me. And I couldn't be happier at this point. I really couldn't. Like I told you, hopefully we can hold all this muscle coming down, because sometimes that can be a big problem as well. That'll be for another day. We'll talk about something like that. But with that being said, I just want you guys to understand why I took my body weight as high as I did. And it wasn't junk calories either. It was only maybe 2 cheat meals a week. But we had to, in order to be able to compete at the level that we're hoping to compete at, especially at the weight class that I want to compete at. So with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing Tuesday. Do something awesome, because the weather is great.